It has been a while since I've played Sonic Adventure 2. As a big fan of Sonic Adventure, I looked forward to the sequel and purchased it when it came out on the Dreamcast back in 2001. I hated it. Thanks to the power of the Wayback Machine, I was able to find some of my original ramblings from June 28th, 2001, just 5 days after release, and younger me sounds a lot like the fanbase of today. For example, I stated, the stages are also more restricted. I miss those huge stages. The original was more Sonic, so to speak. They are trying to evolve Sonic into something he is not, and I found the result not a whole lot of fun. Sonic has always been on the cutting edge of cool in both graphics and gameplay mechanics. It is funny reading these comments because it sounds like the same complaints different generations of Sonic fans make about the Sonic games they do not like. Moreover, of course, my old comments are not subjective and lacking in any sort of substance. However, there were a few nuggets of analysis. It took me 47 freaking minutes to get through one of Knuckles' stages. I had to do the Rouge's 5 minutes or less stage 20 times before I cleared it. Those two characters were ruined. While some find the polarizing nature of the adventure titles to be a recent phenomenon, it is not historical revisionism. Arguments regarding the quality of the adventure titles began upon their release. Of course, this video is not about my trip down memory lane. This video is about Sonic Adventure 2, perhaps the most beloved and loathed Sonic game of all time. So let us dive in. First, I think it's important to note Sonic Adventure 2 makes some dramatic improvements over the first game in terms of structure. There are no longer 6 campaigns to play through, instead just 2. The biggest benefit is the lack of repeated cutscenes, which would repeat up to 4 times in Sonic Adventure. Instead of offering fresh perspectives or revealing new information, they often padded out the playtime. In Sonic Adventure 2, there are just 2 campaigns, and the streamlined approach fits the storytelling abilities of Sonic Team much better. Another improvement is the lack of hub worlds. Please note, I find nothing inherently wrong with hub worlds as a concept. However, in Sonic Adventure, they hid upgrades with little in-game purpose, created a lot of needless backtracking thanks to strange level placement, and they often made the player walk from cutscene to cutscene for no real reason. It dragged the pace of the game down. Thankfully, Sonic Team seemed to agree and eliminated them. Character upgrades are located in stage, and one never has to walk to trigger a cutscene. Anyway, to further this point about pacing, players will be racing down City Escape within about 1 minute of selecting the hero campaign. In Sonic Adventure, it takes nearly 5 minutes from selecting Sonic's campaign to racing along the beaches of Emerald Coast. It is clear to me Sonic Team learned something and worked to improve upon the things that worked in the first game and ditched the mechanics that didn't work. This includes not only the structure of the adventure, but the amount of playstyles as well. I concluded in my previous video that Sonic, Knuckles, and Gamma had the best campaigns. The 3 gameplay styles were sufficiently different, suited the level layouts, and offered the most compelling stories with the least amount of fluff. It seems Sonic Team reached the same conclusion, as these are the playstyles making it into Sonic Adventure 2. Of course, there are still 6 playable characters, with Sonic's speed stages, Tails' shooting stages, and Knuckles' hunting stages making up the hero campaign, then mirrored with Shadow, Eggman, and Rouge in the Dark campaign. Stages are not duplicated either, with different set pieces utilized for 2 different playstyles, or the stages being sufficiently different when the same playstyle is used. Think of it like in Act 1 and Act 2. On the surface, these changes should make Sonic Adventure 2 a slam dunk. Streamlined progression, reduced repetition, less duplicated story. Even with the improvements, however, Sonic Adventure 2 is far from perfect. Sticking with the theme of polarizing, the best place to start with Sonic Adventure 2 is the story. The game opens with Sonic escaping a helicopter manned by an organization called Gun. However, I cannot help but notice the dialogue. People often proclaim modern Sonic games are bad because Sonic is always cracking corny jokes that are out of character. However, here we are. Moving along, Sonic runs into Shadow and quickly surmises he has been mistaken for this mysterious new hedgehog. This is reasonable enough. Despite being a point of contention for others, I do not have a problem with cartoon-style tropes of mistaken identity. However, what I do find cringy is how these two knuckleheads keep calling each other fake hedgehogs. Clearly, there is more than one hedgehog on the planet. You know, like Amy. It seems the writers could have been more clever in developing the rivalry. Moving along is Knuckles and Rouge. Somehow, the Master Emerald is not on Angel Island, but instead in the desert, and these two characters argue over ownership. Same as ever, Eggman appears and snatches it, leaving me to wonder why Knuckles is the one guarding it when he is so bad at it. I don't want to nitpick here, but when I'm told the characters, world building, and story are the reasons the adventure titles are so good, and that modern Sonic games need to go back to the adventure-style storytelling, then I feel diving into these idiosyncrasies is fair game. Anyway, before Eggman is able to fly away with the Master Emerald, Knuckles smashes it, freeing Chaos. Wait, Chaos is no longer locked inside the Master Emerald? Weird. Meanwhile, Knuckles and Rouge continue their, tension. Rouge falls off a platform and Knuckles saves her. This is charming enough. However, Rouge is a bat. She has wings. She can fly. I bring this up again because the game is not clear on how serious I should be taking the story. The hero story is competent for sure, though is still a little fluffy. For example, Knuckles seems shoehorned in, with his Master Emerald quest rarely intersecting with Sonic in a meaningful way. The Master Emerald does not power the Eclipse Cannon. Eggman steals the thing and then sort of forgets about it the rest of the way. Sonic and Tails' side quest to find the President is also a little silly. The Space Colony arc is not exactly hiding, and it is in the shape of Eggman's face. The dark story mostly succeeds. This begins right away, with Eggman searching for a top-secret military weapon created by his grandfather. That top-secret weapon is Shadow the Hedgehog. Shadow instructs Eggman to gather the Chaos Emeralds and meet him on the Space Colony arc. Players will learn Shadow stole a Chaos Emerald from the Federal Reserve Bank, not Sonic. This explains why the government agents at the beginning of the game were holding Sonic. I like this. What I do not like are the flashbacks. Much like Adventure 1, Adventure 2 features flashbacks to help fill in the backstory. The first flashback shows Shadow and a girl named Maria running from something or someone on the space colony. Maria captures Shadow in the capsule, similar to Sonic in the present time, asks Shadow to do something, and then jettisons him off to the planet below. That something is revenge. Shadow catches Rouge pondering taking the 6 Chaos Emeralds Eggman has gathered up to this point. It dawns on him Rouge the Bat might be the government spy Rouge the Bat, and this begs all sorts of questions. How did Shadow learn about this government spy when deactivated or sleeping for the past 50 years, only being awake for at best 2 days? Rouge finds the files on Project Shadow she is looking for, and Project Shadow looks nothing like the Shadow we have come to know and love. Shadow is unfazed with this news, however, and warns Rouge to leave the emeralds alone so Eggman can take over the world and Shadow can fulfill his promise to Maria. Sadly, or fortunately, depending on one's perspective, when Eggman puts the 7th Chaos Emerald into the Eclipse Cannon, something goes wrong. Presumably, Sonic has destroyed the weapon. However, Rouge accomplishes virtually nothing, with Shadow intercepting her before she can swipe the 6 Chaos Emeralds from the Eclipse Cannon and succeed. It seems everything the old doctor loved had been taken, upsetting him. This video is even more nonsensical as Gerald is chained to a chair. Once finished, a background voice from the video asks if there is anything else Gerald wants to say, followed by "ready," almost as if there's a firing squad waiting to execute him. So, if this was the final moments of the professor's life, how did he record the footage and program it to play once the 7 Chaos Emeralds were inserted into the Eclipse canon? It does not make sense, and this clip always sucks me right out of the story.
What's odd here is how exactly Gerald arranged it so the recording of his own execution would play when the 7 emeralds were inserted into the Eclipse canon. Well, we know from Gunn's possession of chaos drives in Artificial Chaos and the writing on Gerald's cell wall that he was allowed to continue his research to some extent while in custody, at least enough to where he had significant access to the ARC and its programming. So from there, it's not much of a stretch to assume he could then program the camera that would record his execution to connect to and upload to the ARC and play once his program was initiated. All that he would need is for that camera to be around while he worked, but it's not really relevant how exactly it happened. The important thing is that Gerald is portrayed as a menacing puppet master, a grave presence and threat even after he's long dead.
Speaking of convenient, Amy runs into Shadow and urges him to assist with the plan. However, as Shadow is still in revenge mode, he declines. However, he then has another flashback and remembers Maria does not want revenge, she wants the people on Earth to be happy. Therefore, now Shadow saves the Earth. The big plot twist, the moment everything in the game builds up to, is this. Shadow misremembered something. This is stupid. Payoff without setup. Rouge briefly alludes to the fact Shadow's memories might not be real, but even this is generous. Had the story followed some sort of logical path of Shadow trying to remember his past, deciphering what is real and what is not, and overcoming an internal conflict to arrive at this pivotal moment, it could have been really deep and meaningful. However, this does not occur. Everything in Sonic Adventure 2 feels like a happy accident. Amy says the people of Earth are good. Shadow is like, oh yeah, I guess I'll save the Earth now. The storytelling is about as deep as a puddle. A better example of handling memory loss and the complex emotions that come with slowly piecing things together would be the Bourne films. In it, the protagonist has to work to regain his memories and deal with the complex emotions that come from learning what he is and where he came from. Jason Bourne does not just wake up and remember everything one morning. The plot is poor. The story is very simple. The plot continues as Sonic and Knuckles reach the dome housing Project Shadow. Upon entering, more Professor Gerald cutscenes play. How is the professor able to record these while chained to a chair awaiting his death? Who knows? With Shadow now on Team Sonic, he destroys the prototype. Knuckle uses the Master Emerald to neutralize the Chaos Emeralds, but this does not resolve the issue, so yeah, thanks Knuckles for your contributions. Where City Escape feels rich, vibrant, and interesting, Metal Harbor feels like a bunch of square and rectangular platforms sitting in a sea of blue. Green Forest offers a similar conundrum. Sonic is funneled through lush tubes on his way to the goal ring, and everything feels very samey. Thankfully, the stage does have a few gimmicks. First are these hourglass timers. Once engaged, the player will have a limited amount of time to get through a door. This meshes well with the gameplay. Move quickly and players will find success. Move slowly or play poorly and one will have to try again. A less interesting gimmick are the keys. They offer flashbacks to Amy in SA1 and I do not understand their inclusion. There is potential for this to be interesting. Sonic must hold the key, so moves like the bounce and homing attack are not available. Therefore, the designers could have designed the segments around tricky enemy or hazard patterns to challenge players to bring the key to its destination while being handicapped with a limited moveset. However, they did not. All of these strange design quirks come to a head in Sonic's final stage, Final Rush. It manages to be blocky, tube-like, and rehashed all at the same time. The biggest thing that struck me are these vertical pipes. Sonic needs to homing attack into them, transferring the horizontal energy to vertical energy, allowing upward progression. Unfortunately, the gimmick repeats at least 16 times. A decent foundation was laid in Sonic Adventure 1. A timer ticked down and players needed to defeat enemies to add to the clock. The more enemies a player locked onto, the greater the time bonus offered, adding depth and strategy to the gameplay. While SA1 never really pushed the concept to the limits, a real sense of urgency could be found when the timer neared zero. Sadly, instead of building upon this foundation, Sonic Team scrapped the concept altogether. There is no longer a countdown. Large combos are no longer required to beat stages. The race against the clock gameplay is gone, and with it, any potential for rewarding gameplay. Instead, replaced with repeating the same actions over and over and over. In Iron Gate, for example, Eggman has to break this same door 11 times. That means one door every 18 seconds. That is not a math error. This shooting obstacle, where one wiggles the analog stick until 4 targets are locked, release the fire button, and then wait a moment while the door explodes, is a major stage gimmick. Hidden Base is another prime example. The player has to break this same crumbling wall 23 times. This works out to breaking a wall every 13 seconds. Fire, 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 repeat every 13 seconds. Sand Ocean suffers from the same repetition. There are large pillars the player must knock down, 8 of them in all. Every 35 seconds, the player has to knock one of these down, which forms a platform for progression. This is a mildly interesting way to structure a level, using the weapon to make platforms, but not at this frequency. It would be far more engaging if these falling platforms were part of a puzzle, where strategically knocking down platforms in a specific or clever order was required to unlock the path forward, but no, it is automatic. This continues to get worse as each campaign wears on. Cosmic Wall has Eggman jumping up and then falling down the same tower structure over and over. Eternal Engine suffers a similar fate, with Tails walking through the same corridors over and over. It feels like padding. Rather than crafting clever levels taking advantage of the unique shooting mechanics, brain-dead gimmicks are used instead, and then repeated a ridiculous number of times. There is no growth or progression. The mech shooting is a massive step backwards from the first game, which was underdeveloped to begin with. Moving on, we have the treasure hunting stages. Of course, the biggest mechanical change with the game's style is the radar. In the first game, the radar worked on all 3 treasure pieces at the same time. Combined with the small stages, players could reasonably zip around and complete levels quickly. In Sonic Adventure 2, the radar only works sequentially. A player can still find treasure pieces out of order if they happen to spot one, but the radar has been nerfed hard. I assume the designers did this to prevent the levels from being completed too quickly. This system is not particularly useful for a first-time player. Until one has played through a treasure hunting stage multiple times, many of the hints will not be useful as the player is not aware of any key landmarks, and some of these stages are massive. This flies counterintuitive to the nerfed radar. clues are not always that great anyway. This treasure is not on a sandy path. This treasure is not in the shadows. The treasure hunting is likely where new players will hit some pace-breaking brick walls. Death Chamber will likely trip up first-timers, especially on the Dreamcast port. GameCube port adds an exclamation mark when a player is over a buried emerald, making it easier to identify where to dig, though it is not foolproof. Still, I have wasted many a minutes on the Dreamcast version digging for emerald shards with the radar pulsing away at full clip. Much of it is luck-based as well. On my 2 recorded runs, I completed Death Chamber once in 6 minutes 42 seconds and a second time in 12 minutes 57 seconds. This doubled time does not represent reduced skill, just unlucky treasure placement. Meteor Herd is another troubling stage. The first 2 clues provided in this example are a lot of meteorites and jump from the star. After finding what appears to be a logical place to jump from a star, the radar remains silent and I carry on hovering everywhere trying to get a blip on the radar to no avail. After obtaining a 3rd clue, farthest meteorite you see after using the spring, it appears my initial instincts were in fact correct, despite the radar. Using the spring again, I was able to get a blip on the radar. The problem is, there is an invisible barrier marking the edge of the stage. However, there are meteorites on the other side of the barrier. Without a visual clue, there is no way for the player to know which meteorite is in fact the farthest one away. I'm sorry, but this is poor design.
Look at it! Look at it! Look at it!
Even worse, when the player fails to find the correct meteorite, they have to painstakingly make their way back up the stage and reach the spring to get another attempt. This repetition is incredibly tedious. Worse yet, on this playthrough, I finally located the correct meteorite and broke it, but did not receive the emerald shard. So now, when I hit the spring, I have to try and spot a tiny emerald shard in the distance, with no camera controls. Worse yet, the game engine is designed in a way where small objects in the distance will not even appear on the screen. Here, we can clearly see the emerald appear from thin air, meaning even if the player is facing the correct direction, it might not be visible. While someone who has spent hundreds of hours with Sonic Adventure 2 might not run into these issues, newcomers to the franchise likely will. Hitting one of these unlucky spawns, having to find meteorites out in space, and then trying to find something that may or may not be on the screen can be a frustrating experience. While some seasoned players cannot comprehend how one could spend a half hour on an emerald hunt and chalking it up to get good, these are real experiences people have when playing Sonic Adventure 2. The next troubling stage is, of course, Security Hall. First off, the 5-minute time limit is ridiculous. The only other stage on my 2 recorded runs where I finished in under 5 minutes twice was the very first one, Wild Canyon. Second, the game forgets to clue the player in on a very important gameplay element. Some safes are locked. To unlock them, the player needs to travel all the way to the top of the stage and hit a switch. Until a player figures this out, as I could not get any of the Omachows to tell me this stage will be a crapshoot. If the treasure is not in a locked safe, the player has a chance. If it is in a locked safe, good luck. I like the gimmick aspect of it, a switch opening a door that is not 3 feet away. However, I do not understand why the game fails to communicate this to the player in a reasonable way.
There may be a switch to unlock them in the room upstairs.
Like Meteor Herd, the treasure respawns will likely dictate how tolerable this stage is. On my final recorded run, I got this gem of a spawn. If the player hits the train where the treasure is, they fall. Okay. On another attempt, Rouge's ear even clips through the emerald shard, but it does not register. As the emerald is floating in the air and moving, the player will have to travel back around the planetoid to get another attempt, adding precious minutes to the stage time. In short, the treasure hunting is awful. While on paper it should be superior to the first game, in practice it is much worse. The radar should not have been nerfed, the collision detection should be better. Emerald shard should not disappear when the player is too far away. Moreover, Meteor Herd and Mad Space should have been designed in a way where vertical progression could be accomplished with the climbing abilities, rather than specific springs and rockets. The homing attack in Sonic Adventure 2 does not always feel accurate and seems to have a mind of its own, meaning sometimes the player will flat out not hit an enemy, or hit an enemy but take damage instead. This lack of precision with the maneuver can make the fight against the prototype maddening as the player homes into nothing.
Sonic the Hedgehog is sort of a rock star of the video gaming industry. He fronted a succession of extremely popular titles, made enough money to buy St. Paul's Cathedral and grind it into a fine snortable powder, hung around with a lot of suspiciously effeminate young boys, abused a number of forbidden substances, spiraled downwards as inevitably as Al-Qaeda Airways, weathered a few very embarrassing attempts to re-grab the spotlight, and now recently, for example, the notion finally broke through that most people want Sonic games to be about Sonic, and that his ever-expanding entourage of neon woodland creatures can all go dive under a tractor.